Good morning, 6AMERS. The 6AMERS began in April 2020 in the heart of the pandemic. Forming this podcast is our way of extending the community and the message of the community into the world. Good morning and welcome to the 6AMERS podcast. My name is Skye Michaels. I am the host of this podcast, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Emily Bossert. Emily, good morning.
Good morning, Skye. Great to be with you today.
It's so good to be here.
It is.
What a beautiful day. And Emily, as I was waking up this morning, we always are harping on the power of a word, right? One word intention. What is one word that describes your intentions around your health? You obviously are a really, really healthy person. And what is one word that describes your intentions around your personal health?
Wow, that's a great question. I would have to say forgiving, because there are days that I do really, really well. I eat healthy, I wake up early, I take care of myself, I practice my yoga. And then there are also days when I wake up totally exhausted. And I do need to forgive myself in those moments. And I think that part of being healthy is being imperfect.
Amazing. That's I just learned so much from that one word. I really hope everyone listening to this can harp on the power of one word and how it can really create pathways in your life. So Emily, normally I introduce the guest, but actually I want to kick it to you. This person is a special person in my life, but I know this person is really special for you.
Yes.
Currently. So do you mind introducing our guest today?
I would love to introduce our guest, Melanie Klein, who is an empowerment coach. I will tell you how special she is to me. After this call, I reached out to her and said, I want you to be my empowerment coach. That's how impactful this woman is. So we are just really excited to be joined by her today.
Amazing. And for me personally, when I was listening to Melanie and in this interview, like she dove all into her professional life and really how her mindset changes everything, right? Your mindset around everything you do in your life and your business is so powerful. And I connected in a really deep level because of her mindset around her divorce. And her relationship with her ex-husband is so phenomenal. And it really was inspirational for me as someone who is also divorced to have a model out there of someone who created a friendship with her co-parent, right? And for me, that's really my drive and my goal with my co-parent, my ex-wife, is to create a friendship, because the reality is the more powerful she is, the more healthy she is, the more healthy my kids are. And I remember talking to Melanie, and it was her birthday, and there were flowers, and I said, "Oh, that's nice. Who got you those flowers?" And she said, "Oh, my ex-husband." I was like, "That is awesome." So I really, really connected with this one on a personal level. Emily, for you, what was, I know you connected so deeply. You hired her as a coach, and now you guys are also working on some ventures. But for you, what was some memories of this that really clicked for you?
It was a really pivotal moment in my life. And she started talking about the why, and really that in order to look at our whys, we have to do some deep introspection of ourselves. We have to unpack and understand why we're doing things the way we're doing them. And to me, that's one of the things that a lot of us just kind of skim over. We don't do the deep work. We don't do the introspection. But in order to live a well-lived life, we really have to look deeply at our why.
That's so powerful. Well, with that, let's get into this amazing interview with Melanie Klein. Hope you enjoy it. Good morning, Melanie.
Hey, Skye.
If you don't mind, give us some background on who you are and sort of what you're passionate about.
Yeah, so my name is Melanie Klein. I'm an empowerment coach. I've been doing a lot of work with actually many of the people who are here today. It's fun to see some familiar faces. My background is actually in education and academia. I've also been a gender, women's studies, and sociology professor for 19 years. And also have been practicing meditation and yoga. Oh my God, it's so crazy to date myself this way, but for almost 27 years, which is now over half my life, as I'm turning 50 this year. And I've actually taken those two things and put them together into how I work with my clients. When I first came to feminism and to sociology, media literacy, was really blown away by the way that changed my world and my perspective and my relationship with myself. And then 2 years later, walked into my first yoga class, and it was very odd at the time, given that there weren't yoga studios all over. This was about 1996, but knew that there was something that was happening, although I couldn't exactly put my finger on what it was. But I knew that essentially what was occurring is each of those things was about raising consciousness. One was more of sort of an intellectual, theoretical perspective. The other one was really learning how to embody some of those things that I was beginning to understand. And so for me, at that particular point, what became my biggest passion and my mission was honestly to share what I had been learning and experiencing with others. And from there, I've written books, I have done book chapters, I have done speaking, coaching, teaching, and now I'm here with all of you this morning.
Awesome. We appreciate it. And
Yeah.
you were on, I want to say it was probably about a year or so ago.
Yeah, almost exactly a year ago. Actually, I was going to check the date to see if we had like our anniversary, but it was somewhere the beginning of 2021.
Yeah. And we've grown a little bit since then in the group.
You have grown a lot. It was actually very cool to see all the different changes that have been occurring, especially in the last few months, really watching. And I was like, good job, because like you had said, there were very few people at the beginning. And clearly, I think this is one of the highlights of actually what has come out of 2020 and 2021 is there are so many people looking to connect in really conscious community and infuse their business with more meaning and purpose, right? As opposed to just the bottom line.
So talk to us, Melanie, you said you're an empowerment coach. Give us a synopsis. What does that mean to be an empowerment coach?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I met Denise Freed, some of you over in California or beyond obviously know Denise, who, she had wanted me to come in for Women of Compass to start really doing some of the coaching techniques that I have done in my own life, because she had felt it was very different than what typical, primarily, no offense, male real estate coaches were doing in the industry. And that was really looking at the whole person, doing an integrated methodology. So empowerment coaching for me really means about stepping into our fullest expression of self and being able to bring our unique talents and gifts to the world. Because for me, it's not just about what we personally then have in our bank account or what we are, the kind of fulfillment we may be having with our families, but what do we do with that newfound sense of empowerment, that voice that we may be harnessed that we didn't have before, that level of confidence, that ability to do and be differently. And how does that change our communities? How does that change the world? So for me, it's about doing that in a really authentic manner, which is why I also don't have a sort of, very specific step-by-step process. It's very different for each person or each team that I'm working with, but it's really understanding how they're built, how they operate, what they need to do, where they came from, where they want to go, and how they're going to use that in their business and in the world at large. So hopefully that kind of makes sense a little bit. Not too big.
Yeah.
Okay.
What if you could sum up, like, what do you feel are the biggest struggles that people are going through right now, or even in like 2021, that you feel like you've been able to help them overcome?
I'm actually going to answer that question, but kind of talk about how this year has started.
Yeah.
Because one thing that's interesting, I was on social media and I saw an ex-boyfriend of mine, and I have to say, sometimes social media is the best reminder why an ex is an ex, okay? And he posted this meme of a train coming down the tracks on fire, and it says, "Here comes 2022." And I just I had this moment of first disgust, okay? And then just real sadness, to be quite honest, because I went, wow, he's already committed to this is going to be a terrible year. And so that lens, and I'm looking at your shirt, Skye, Thoughts Become Things, was everything he sees, right, is going to be from that perspective. That is what he's going to be focusing on, what he's going to be looking for, which will then translate into the way that he communicates, the things that he does, and it becomes real, right? And what I found with the clients I worked with in 2020 and 2021 was primarily really cultivating a success mindset, a growth mindset, which I know you do this as well, right? You and Emily, is looking for what's working, what's going well, what we're grateful for, so that we really train our perspective to begin to see the good, to begin to see the opportunities, to begin to see every single challenge that is actually serving us to grow and transforming that into something new. And I think that was one of the primary things, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, right? Where people were so incredibly unsure of what was going to happen, is how can we stay so focused? How can we keep moving forward in a way that no matter what is happening around us, we still have the innate power, right, to shape the world that we live in? And I think that was really the biggest thing, because 2020 was a great year for me. And to be honest, 2021 was probably the best I've had ever.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I don't just mean that financially, obviously. I mean in every single way. It was just bountiful, beautiful, exhilarating. And I really have no doubt 2022 is going to be the same.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things too. It's funny because it's hard for, I think, well, I don't want to say it's hard. Because once again, thoughts become things, but I think our greatest opportunities to view every challenge as an opportunity, right? It's like that is the opportunity. And maybe in the chat, guys, put in the chat something you're challenged with today. And right now, try to think of the opportunity that could come with it. Like COVID, opportunity was we formed groups across the country like this, right? I mean, that was an opportunity. And in the chat, like be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm struggling with COVID. Maybe you have COVID right now. Maybe, parents are sick. Maybe kids are sick. I don't know, right? But what is the opportunity you have in that challenge? And Melanie, how do you coach people who are encountering challenges? Because that's all, business and life and everything that's, we come up with these challenges. And how do you coach people around shifting that mindset away from the victim, like the train on fire, right? Like, oh God, here comes this year, to the, like, oh my God, like this is going to be so awesome. And it doesn't matter what happens to me. I'm going to make sure it's an opportunity.
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be different for every single person, but we do go in deep. And so one thing, it's interesting, I talk about how these methods and these philosophies are all really simple and effective, yet they're not always easy, right? Because we are so deeply ingrained in these mindsets from our parents, from our peers, from the media, whatever it happens to be. So it's a combination, kind of like the way that I came to feminism and sociology and, yoga and meditation is, we sort of excavate, we explore, we identify, we sort of really begin to deconstruct the world that they live in, both personally and collectively, and then begin to create a new framework. And we practice that consistently and have a ton of accountability. And what I find is a lot of times, there's that really keen understanding of like, oh, I get those concepts. I really love that. Oh my God, Skye, I love your shirt. I totally get it. I understand it. Yeah. But when the first thing that happens, right, becomes a challenge, they kind of, like teeter and fall. So it's a matter of constantly coming back to center and practicing, not just when it's convenient, not just when it's working well, but when it is not working well at all, so that eventually there's a completely new default setting. And I actually would love to share, if anyone has seen this book, this is a new book by Bob Proctor, which is called Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life. Bob Proctor, he's 86 or 87 now. He's been around a really long time. And he's one of, let's say, the OGs in really teaching the laws of the universe. And it's a very simple, little bit kind of clunky book, but the concepts are in there, that it's not just about changing our beliefs, which yes is powerful, right? And I really encourage people to take every negative or scarcity thought that they're having and simply turn it around, create a new statement. But we have to get to our core beliefs as well, right? Like, what is the scaffolding of the experiences and the perspectives that we have, and actually changing that? Because if we're only changing the thoughts as they come in, that's powerful and that's a great step and it's a win, right? And I applaud that. But we really have to get to, what were some of the ideas and beliefs and values, exactly, Gretchen, that, our family of origin, our communities, taught us, that really begins to inform the beliefs. I was briefly, I don't know if you want to call it dating. I don't know what you want to call it, but I had rekindled with an ex of mine sometime, I don't know, last year. And when we had gotten together, when I was around 24 at the beginning of this journey, we were very much in sync, great chemistry, all of this stuff. So when we reunited, both of us now single, out of our marriages, I was like, oh, this is great. I was so excited. And a couple months in, I remember looking around going, oh shit, yeah, this is not going to work. Who I was then is not who I am at all anymore. And who he was then is exactly who he still is. And everything was doom and gloom and everything was terrible. And I just had these moments of asking, like, what makes you happy? When are you happy? When do you see this thing in your life as either a blessing and just wasn't there? So obviously that didn't work out, but
Yeah.
really great example of his paradigm, his view of the world was so incredibly fixed. It was not malleable in any way, that his life just continued to be, a slightly different version of what had been going on for the last 30 years. And unfortunately, that's incredibly common. So we really have to get to that core base and begin to shift that. And that's what I do with the people that I work with.
And I think it's hard to shift sometimes because a lot of our stuff is like just ancient baggage, right?
Oh,
Like,
God, yes.
like the stuff we've been dragging along and dragging along for our life, right? How do you A, become aware of your baggage, and then B, let go of it, right? I'm almost visualizing the backpack, right? Like, hey, I don't even realize I'm wearing the backpack, but then I'm aware of it. How do I let go of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, well, that's one of the great things about, mindfulness. So my mentors really scoffed at that whole, line of thinking. This was not a mainstream way of looking at the world. This was not an in vogue thing at all. But for me, I remember saying, listen, if we're talking about, social justice work, which I have, lots of experience in, and we're looking to change systems and we're looking to, create new opportunities, we have to also deal with the individual, which was very, I think, to a certain degree, taboo. We only focus on the collective. And I was like, yeah, at the expense of the individual, we really need to focus on what we're thinking so we can create this new opportunity. And part of that was bringing in, awareness of the breath, bringing in this awareness of where we are in the present moment, because the truth is most North Americans for sure don't think about that at all, right? And so if you are not in the present moment, you really cannot access the space that exists, which I like to say, if you want to hit the exit on the freeway, like if you're going, running down this track of just complete negativity, despondence, despair, disappointment, whatever it is, if you do not have the ability to access that mental space, you cannot make a different choice. You can't even be aware of the track that you're on. I had a client who had been in a situation recently, a family dynamic, and for one of the first times ever was able to step away and see, like, oh, this is really dysfunctional. Okay. It is not okay. Right. We just came out of the holidays. So there were plenty of opportunities probably to see that, because for her, for the longest time, that's all she'd ever known. That's all she'd ever experienced. And just by creating a little bit of awareness throughout the day, and I believe I read it somewhere, Skye, I don't know if it was on your social media, but you were saying, bring the breath in, right? So you have a little bit more space, you have a little bit more awareness. And that's what I mean when I say it's really simple. Start with that.
Yeah.
Be aware of your breath during the day. Be aware, oh, okay, I'm right here. Like maybe you touch the desk, maybe you look around, you just take a moment to assess where you're at. And you can disconnect that moment from where you were earlier in the morning, from last week, last year, and you have the ability to then consciously and purposefully, like Emily set everybody up, to decide what is going to happen today, what you're going to create, what you're going to do, who you're going to be. But the only way to make that happen is you have to do it consistently, right? And where do we live? We live in a culture where it's, instant gratification, and we really take for granted the power and the ability that we have as long as we are enacting very consistently. So that's one of the first places that I start. We have to see where we're at.
Yeah. And God, there's so many thoughts coming to my mind. I mean,
I know, it's so fun, right? I love this.
I know. Like, well, the first word that was coming to my mind was choices, and then the second word that's coming to my mind is consistency. And then when you
Yep.
combine those two, right, like really that's what anything is about, is like making those small choices and then
Yep.
doing it consistently. And I think where almost everyone fails for the most part is the word consistency, right? Like we all know as professionals, like
Yep.
very few people on this call don't know what to do, right? But we know we should be active on social media. We know we should reach out to our sphere. We know we should be eating healthy. We know we should be meditating,
Sure.
but we'll do it for like a week and then we stop doing it. Like, how do you, I would love to know this because this is what I sort of do as a profession. Like, how do you teach people consistency? Like, I have like little techniques, but I'd love to hear you from your perspective, like, because it's a key thing as a coach, right? Like, part of the reason people pay you is just to be consistent.
Yes, and I mean, for the people that I work with, they know like I give a lot. I'm constantly in touch, right? Checking in. So one thing is I'm there creating accountability, checking in, asking questions, but I also look for what is going to make the most sense for them in terms of their reminders, right? This is where not everyone's the same, not the same things are going to work, right? So I kind of check with my clients like what is going to make sense for you, and then we tweak. So it's constantly like, for me it's like fiddling the dials, right? But with that said, one thing that is going to be the same for all my clients and for myself is you're not going to be consistent unless you want that really effing bad. Okay.
Yeah.
So and Bob Proctor talks about that in the book too. It's in other books that I use with my clients. Like, you have got to have a really deep desire, right? And oftentimes in coaching, and I'm sure you all talk about it, is you have got to have your why. And unfortunately, what I think is now that personal development is so much more common. If we look at pop culture, mainstream media, like they're bringing in some of the vernacular, they're talking about some of the things, which to be honest, I think is great on one hand, but I feel like it cheapens it to a certain degree. I feel like people take for granted or are used to hearing that stuff like, oh, my vision board, right? You watch a show and they talk about their vision board or their intentions and they kind of like, snicker, and people are like, oh yeah, we do that. But what usually happens, right? It's like, they're like, I just do the vision board, and then they forget about it.
Yeah.
Or, I write down my intentions and they don't actually embody it. And so we really have to come back to the basics in a meaningful way and have a deep why, and have that why actually mean something, right? As opposed to, yeah, I've got my why. Do you have your why? I mean, hopefully that's making sense. And that
Yeah.
why has to be so freaking compelling. So compelling. When I had my last, let's say, big up level or shift, was about 5 or 6 years ago. And I will say, I'd been doing good work for a long time, written a lot of books. I had been doing my leadership work and all that. And on paper, had a really successful career in life. And yet inside, given with my marriage, I was like, I am settling big time. And yet I know consciously I do not have the bandwidth to work on this more than I am. So that was fine. When I was ready, it was terrifying. I mean, there were so many changes that were going to happen. And I had to buckle up, like literally buckle up for what was about to come. There were times I was like laying in the fetal position going, I have the courage and capacity to hold this expansiveness. Like I was in it, right? But what was so compelling was I was looking for complete freedom. I wanted to have freedom primarily from the emotional ties that I had had, and that emotional dependency almost that I had on this image of our marriage. And so my why, that freedom, was just the most powerful magnet to pull me forward. So there were so many times that, I mean, really, I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was so terrifying. But I knew what was on the other side was so freaking glorious. And I wanted it so deeply that it pulled me through. And of course, I had my own coach, my own support system.
Yeah.
And so, that, in short, to a very long answer that I gave you, you have to have an incredibly compelling why. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions and you are not going to be wholehearted. You're not going to embody the gratitude that you talk about because you
Yeah.
can't check it off like a list.
Yeah.
Right? You have to feel it. It has to open your heart. It has to open something new in you. And then when you feel that, it feels so good. It feels so, freeing that you're like, okay, I can do a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you keep going. So that's really, I think, the most, important piece of the equation, if you will, is you have to have a compelling why. It's not just like, oh, I want to have, I want to do this many transactions this year. Or I want to have, I want to move to this price point. Okay, but do you know why? What are you going to do? Well, let's say that newfound time that opens up when you make just as much money or more because, and you have fewer transactions because it's at a higher price point. Or, what are you going to do with, this new team, fill in the blank? What are you going to experience? And it has to be something you can see, you can feel, you can really place yourself already in that picture and operate from that place.
Yeah, so powerful. And
Yeah.
I think, and then it's your inspiration has to be bigger than your excuses, right? It's like,
Yes.
it has to be, or else your excuses are so powerful and they're always around us. It's so easy to give in if you're not inspired. So,
And even when you say your inspiration has to be bigger than your excuses, like I love these nice, tidy little phrases that we can write down, that we can come back to. But I just want to keep bringing people back to that's not where you stop. You don't stop. Like I have a friend who I've known for 30 plus years, and she's got all the things in her house, right? Like all the sayings, she's got the rocks, she's got all the Buddha statues. She continues to be one of the most miserable people I know. And I love that she has these reminders for herself, right? I mean, I'm not knocking that at all, but that's where it ends for her. To really go into doing the work is something that, quite honestly, she's not willing to do. And yet she will not say that. So for me, if we're talking about, you were talking about choice, which to me, I always say that's your superpower, people. The ability to make conscious choices, right? So if you could say, hey, like I did, 8 years ago, I was like, I know I'm freaking settling in this marriage. And yet I'm making a conscious choice that right now, oh gosh, Victoria, I've heard that. Right now, like it's been, I've heard that since like 19. So it's just funny. But I was able to say, like, right now, all I can focus on, was my son and my career. And right now, this part, I'm just gonna leave it alone. I know I'm freaking dying a little inside, but at least I'm consciously choosing to stay here and not pretending, right? In her case, she really thinks that going and buying another rock or, another pink plaque that says, live, love, laugh, or whatever is going to be it. And, we have to embody that deeply. So if you hear Skye with these really powerful nuggets, you write it down and you get quiet, right? Like Emily leads you to do, and you really embody, what does that feel like? What does that look like? What does that sound like? Which means, how are you going to live that? Yeah. Whatever it is that is inspiring you, how are you going to live that? And that's been, I think, my secondary mission is to educate people in such a way that it goes beyond the intellect and it goes into the embodiment aspect. Yeah. Or I'm going to just be really blunt, the shit don't work. It just doesn't, we have to merge those things. And that's why I feel very lucky that the way I came into this was with that really, powerful, critical consciousness, that intellectual power of deconstructing the society and our place in it, and then learning how to get quiet and figure out, well, how do I live that? That would have never happened. I can assure you would have never happened had I not started yoga and meditation, where in my Vipassana meditation practice, right, and I would go on retreat, I sat in meditation for 10 to 14 hours a day for 10 days straight. And really learned how to be with myself. Yeah. Because, I did what a lot of people do. I drank, I did drugs when I was younger, used sex, used food, whatever, as a way to escape being in the moment with myself and having to look at what was there, right? But when you can take it moment by moment, you can actually, cultivate that courage, because it does take courage to do this and to do it authentically, effectively, and deeply.
So powerful. It's
Yeah.
I'm connected to so many things, but like, and I think it's so true. It's like I say these sayings, but just so everyone knows, like I struggle with this stuff too. Like last night, I worked all day. I got home. I was tired. I hadn't worked out. I knew I had to work out. It was 9 o'clock. I changed. A phone call came in. I laid down on my bed to take the phone call, of course. And then I'm like sitting there. I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to go. And then I said in my head, I'm not going to make the choice. Like I have a choice, and just go, just drag. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this, but just go. And it's one of these struggles that you can battle yourself, but as long as you come out winning, and yeah, it was like I made it in and it was great. You leave the gym feeling like, oh my God. And honestly, it wasn't even the workout. It was a shitty workout. Right. But the fact that I made the choice to go was like made me feel really good. Do you know what I mean? So
Well, here's the thing, that I want to say, when we have those moments like you do, which I do as well, right? One thing that happens is we find as we go along the path that we usually have those moments more infrequently, right? We experience them less often. The other thing is they tend not to last as long. They tend not to go as deep. So we have like a lot of space between, let's call it incidents, right? As opposed to when I think about when I was younger or clients that I work with, where it's just a whole string of them to the point that that is just the life,
yeah.
right? There's really no space in between. We're looking to just start to begin to create more space between them. We're looking to have them be less, frequent, they're less intense. And then the other part of it is we want to, well, it's funny, the mind over matter. I respectfully disagree with that idea, because for me, that really is kind of solidifying the idea that, the mind has complete, domination over the body. We actually want to integrate. So for me, it's about integration of mind and matter, mind and body, and having the mind kind of get the body, into the place where we go, because here's the key, we remember why. How is this choice that you're making, right? The choice that you made to have your workout actually move you closer to your end goal, to your larger vision, right? So that we can, with that mindfulness and that presence that we're cultivating each day, with each decision, actually determine, is this going to get me closer to my goal? Or is this going to take me a little further away? Or is it going to take me a little longer? Because when I work with people, I'm not really working with 20, 25-year-olds, even though I have, but primarily I'm working with people, 10 to 20 years, on either side of my own age. And we're looking to create really powerful results efficiently and quickly. A lot of times I'll say I have no time to spare and no time to waste, where it's like, I'm not effing around at 50. Like, seriously?
yeah.
I have this very keen awareness of how quickly things are moving. My son's going to be 13 next month. I don't even know how that happened. I spent so much time over the winter break, like looking at pictures of when he was born, looking at pictures of his first birthday, going, oh my God, that was like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I turned 30 5 minutes ago, and now I'm going to be 50. And it's like, how do I want to use this time? How do I want to use this time? And for me, and by the way, I want to say not everyone wants to do this, and that's fine as long as they're aware. I don't want to do this. Like my ex-husband, he had said to me, and this was really honest, I could appreciate, he's like, I don't want to do this really deep work. I don't. And he was talking about with us, with himself. He's like, he had a very, very traumatic childhood. And he said, I'm at the place where, I never really had a childhood. I didn't have joy. I just want to have joy. I just want to have fun. And listen, for him, that means throwing the Frisbee, smoking a joint later in the evening, having a beer, playing guitar. And for me, I'm like, that worked when I was 30.
Yeah.
Not now. But he's like, but that's what I want to do. So I'm like, I'm not going to force you to bring more meaning and purpose and growth, right? He's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Not everybody wants to do this work. And I think that's okay if they understand that they're making a choice and maybe they come back to it later. But for me and the people who I know are in this group, you wouldn't be here, right? If you didn't have the same sort of desire to like, no, but I want a little more. I want to clean up some patterns. I want to let go of some intergenerational trauma. I am really curious to see who I could be and what I could do if I put in a little more effort or did something a little differently. Like what happens then? And that was really, I think, my main motivation, even in my early 20s, is like, I don't want to live this way. I don't want this to have to be my de facto default standard. I really want to see what else is possible. And then never stopped, because every step of the way, I'm more excited. I like myself more. And I know, Skye, when you and I had that conversation recently before the holidays, I said, this truly in my life, and I've had an incredibly good life, this is the happiest I've ever been. It is exceptional. Every day, my son and I are like, we are so blessed. What an incredible life. But we made that happen. I made that happen. I didn't wait for it to happen. I didn't just kind of, set my intention, then go, okay, I'm ready. Like, let me co-create with divine source, with the universe, to bring in that desire. So, yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I have so many, we could talk for 5 hours today.
Oh,
so,
I know. We know.
I did want to, you mentioned it several times, and as someone who also is very proud of my divorce, right? Like, I have a beautiful divorce, and it not right away, like it took a lot of work, and it always takes work, right? I would say divorce with kids, at least, is as much work as marriage in many ways. Tell us more about your divorce. Like, what was like, was there a straw that broke the camel's back, or was there was it a slow progression, or like what happened, and how have you been able to create the situation where you are? I can tell you're proud of it, right?
Yeah.
You should be, like, just like, it's a reality, but we have a stigma. There's a lot of stigma associated with it as well. So,
same. When I reflect back on our conversation over the holidays, we were talking about that we're spending our holidays with our exes and things. And, I think what I'm most proud of is this year, I met his current partner, who's incredible. And we spent Easter together. She hosted Mother's Day for me. Okay. I hosted Christmas at my house. We had Thanksgiving at her house. It was really wonderful, but it was a slow progression. He and I were just in really different places. There's a lot of places where we intersect in terms of how we raise our child, and we definitely have a very deep kinship that's undeniable. And I love him dearly. He is family to me. But in terms of what we wanted to create in a partnership, and the work we wanted to do was very different. And here's the thing: he also told me many times, he's like, Mel, he's like, you're just too much for me. And he didn't mean it in a derogatory sense, right? Which that's how I took it. But reflecting, he really just meant, he's like, you think too fast, you do too, he's like, you just run at a different speed. And he was like, hey, I just want to like chill. Like I said, go surf, do whatever. And you are just digging deep and you have so much energy. It's like, I kind of can't handle it. And I was so offended for so long. And I tried to fit him in the box, right? And yet at the same time, I had tapped out as well, but then I would blame it on him. And so there was a lot of this, projection that was happening until eventually, about 6 or 7 years ago, I really began to take a new level of ownership, and then really step more and more into, what do I really want? I want to have a loving, kind relationship with him. I want to have this family. And it was like, whether or not, his new partner's in the picture or not, it doesn't really matter. Whether he and I are, quote, together or not, we can still be together and create that. So it was just more of understanding this was a piece. And, I love somebody put in Abraham Hicks, right? It's like, what is the piece that I needed to put back into alignment? And it was that. And so part of it, I will admit, was I need to make sure I'm doing this, not just for us as humans, as people in a family dynamic, but I need to do this so that I adjust the frequency that I'm operating on so that I can continue to grow. Like, this is where this work, when I say it goes deep, someone may come to me for a relationship thing. Someone may come to me for a business thing, right? But the through line is that empowerment piece, that consciousness piece, that doing and being differently. And if you come in with one piece, you inevitably have to look at the other piece, right?
Yep.
And so that was part of, I was so great at my career and my community organizing and my leadership and all of these things. It's like, I got to go in here too. So, there were two different reasons why I decided to make that shift. And it's been the most beautiful thing ever. It's part of why this has been the best year ever. And he left, what day was it? He was here the other day because I moved this year 60 miles up the coast from LA, and I now live in Santa Barbara County. So he'd come up, and I was back at work on the last week, and he was with Atticus all day, and he made dinner, and then he took down my Christmas lights, and he was doing all the stuff I needed around the house, and drove home and sent me a text saying, thank you. He's like, our son is so beautiful. I had such a great day. He's like, and we are getting along so well. He's like, I am so happy.
Yeah.
And it's just seeing that when we do this, and when we're not selfish, but we're doing this individual work, knowing that it helps the collective, it resonates. Somebody was, I think it was Allison, was talking about the compound effect. It's just the way that it reverberates out, the way that it builds. So for me, that's what I want to see for all of us. Like, how can we maximize that good energy so everyone is living in a way that is satisfying, right?
So great. And I, I resonate so much with this in the sense of like, I got so fixated on like blame of like, well, I'm not happy because of that. And the reality is, I didn't, until I found happiness within myself, that really was,
oh gosh,
but I needed to also get out of that energy that I was in order to find that as well. And it's such a huge thing. And I think the other thing as well is we got to get out of the world that a piece of paper or a diamond does not define family, right?
Yeah.
We define family. And that's one of the greatest things I think about the world we're entering is that I get to define what my family is, and my ex-wife is part of my family. Her family, like they were over my house for Christmas Eve, and we do birthdays together, holidays together. And it's so beautiful. It's like, but we, drive each other crazy. And if we had to sleep in the same bedroom, like,
he still drives me crazy too.
It drives me insane. But I get to be able to like detach. Okay, you go do that over there. I'm here. Like, we're good. And it's awesome. So anyways, it's really great stuff.
I know we're running time. I just want to say one thing. And I think that's where, being a sociologist has been really helpful with all of it, and why these things made sense for me, because, when we're talking sociology, it's understanding, if we're looking at what's called symbolic interactionism, is the social construction of self, the social construction of ideas, the meanings that we attach to the ideas, and really understanding nothing means anything. They only have the power because we give them the power. And so to me, along with mindfulness, is the exciting idea we get to, deconstruct and recreate whatever it is that we want. We get to define what success means to us, what family looks like, and we don't have to use these one-dimensional myopic ideas of anything that, truth be told, negatively impacts most people. We get to work individually and as a collective to find what makes the most sense for all of us. And so, just in terms of family, what does that look like? We have a really outdated notion of that,
Correct. Yeah. Emily, I've been talking too much, so
same.
I know we've been just on a groove, and I know we're getting towards the end, guys. So but Emily, I wanted to open up to you to be able to at least ask a question or two.
Oh, right. Yes.
Question, Melanie. Oh my gosh, this has been just one of the most incredible interviews.
Oh, good.
One of my questions for you, in terms of, we're always thinking about what we can do to better ourselves, but there's also this sense of what can we remove as well. And when you were talking about, or we were all talking about baggage in the beginning, I know a lot of our baggage isn't even ours. It's what either culture has given us, our family has told us. How do you help your clients work with unpacking what actually isn't theirs so they can let it go and move forward as themselves?
Well, I think first of all, we have to be careful. Coaches are not therapists, right? We're
Right.
not necessarily trauma experts. So we have to just be really mindful of that first and foremost. For me, I like to work on the micro and the macro simultaneously so that we understand, okay, this is the world we're living in. These are the values of, let's say, the mainstream culture. Let's look at what was normative, not normal, normative, right? In your family, in your community. Let's take a look at how these lessons, what memories had an impact in creating what we call the social construction of self. And is that something that works for you? Is that something that you like? And if not, okay, how can you release that? And usually that happens through forgiveness, right? I talk a lot about acceptance, forgiveness, and gratitude. Those are sort of my three pillars. Acceptance doesn't mean that we justify or somehow allow people to do harm to us, but we accept this is what happened, this is where I'm at now, I forgive, fill in the blank, maybe it's also yourself, and then I have gratitude for the opportunity, or I have gratitude for this realization. But it's for some things, it takes quite a while. Some things are an easy cleanup, other things take a little more time, but it's like being able to see, forgive, and release, and then be grateful for what is to come. And that's a very simplistic answer.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, Emily, I think we got to wrap it. So we wanted to do
Yes.
6 at 6. I don't know if we were doing this the last time we interviewed Melanie. So this
I
hopefully
don't
is new.
know either.
We were.
I don't think we were. So Melanie, we end the call asking you 6 quick rapid fire questions that you just get to answer spontaneously, just like you've been doing this entire time.
Okay.
So
I will try because I'm really wordy. I can see hard answers.
Nothing to worry about.
Melanie, how would you describe your perfect day?
Relaxation, the beach, outdoors.
That wasn't wordy at all.
Trying.
If you were to be able to time travel to any place in time and any location, either in the past or the future, when and where would you want to go?
Actually, I know this sounds like a weird answer, but I'm really interested going into 1930s Europe. There was so much conflict and strife, and I would be really interested in just exploring that. Especially I had so many family members who've told me stories. That was just intuitively the first thing that came up.
Yeah. What is one thing that you would love to master?
Oh, gosh. You know what? I don't know if I have an answer because I don't know if mastery is possible. I just feel like ongoing work. So that'll be my answer.
Love it. Okay. Is there one book? Why don't you share one book or one movie that you continue to go back to time and time again?
Oh my God, The Big Lebowski.
I love it.
Great one.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more questions for you, Melanie. Who was your first childhood celebrity crush?
Oh my God, Scott Baio, Chachi from Happy Days. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. And okay, final question. What is the first thing you're going to do after this call?
I'm going to take off this blouse and my bra and probably, get back into bed for a few minutes.
That's awesome. Love it. Love it.
Right? Time to be real.
Great. Great. Well, Mel, what an awesome interview, and absolute pleasure to have spent this last hour with you. And I know you hit home with so many people, and myself included, Emily, and it was really, really fun. So I hope you enjoyed yourself. And
oh my God, I had the best time. I had the best time. Thank you to both of you and to everybody here. It was really a wonderful way to start the day.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Be sure to check out the show notes to get more information on the 6AMers and today's guest. To support the show, we would be beyond grateful if you could leave a review and subscribe to the podcast. We always love hearing from you. On behalf of Skye, myself, and the team here at the 6AMers, we want you to know that you are loved, appreciated, and deserving of a healthy, selfish moment. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.